Are you interested in starting a painting company? If you are, I bet you have a lot of thoughts floating around in your head, a bunch of worries, concerns. That's what I'm going to cover in today's video, is a lot of those thoughts, and I'm going to do that while I explain how to start a painting company. So I'll put up on the screen right now a list of everything that I'm going to cover. If you found this video helpful and you'd like to return the favor, let me know by just hitting that like button, or better yet, comment or subscribe. Alright, so first let's cover how much is this going to cost. In my opinion, there's a lot of different ways that you can do things, but the way I would start a painting business is minimize the risk that you're going to take and keep costs as low as possible. There's a lot of things that you could get, but I would argue are completely unnecessary when you're starting, and I would say wait until you've made money until you buy or invest in those things. There is no reason to get a loan for starting a painting company. Just save up the little bit of money that's needed. Now, everybody's cost is going to be a little bit different. Down in the description, I put a link to a spreadsheet you can make a copy of and follow along in this video and just fill out your specific costs to know how much it's going to cost to start your painting company. But it shouldn't be more than $1,000. I would say as little as $150 all the way up to $1,000 depending on a few things. So the first cost we're going to look at is if you need a business license. Down in the description, you can click on the URL I provided. It's going to take you to a web page that's going to list every single state and tell you whether or not you're going to need a license for painting. You might luck out and be in a state like Illinois where there is no license needed for painting, in which case you're just going to put 0 on that spreadsheet. Now, if you see in your state that you need a license, don't get discouraged. Do some research, and there might even be some kind of workaround. Like you'll notice in Massachusetts, if you stick to just residential interior painting, you don't actually have to get a license. Unfortunately, there are some states, I'll list them on the screen right now, that at least that website I provided claims that you have to have experience to be able to get a license. But again, don't let that discourage you. I imagine if you're watching this video, you probably have a little bit of experience with painting. But that's step one, is to figure out if you need a license. And if you do, go ahead and do some research and figure out what credentials you're gonna need. If you can't figure it out online, just call the office that's gonna be distributing the license. You know, different places might require different things. Like maybe they need you to be registered as a certain kind of business, or they're going to want to see some kind of proof of insurance. Every scenario is going to be a little bit different, but once you know exactly what you're going to need to do, you'll know what you need to work on. And there are a lot of states that you don't need a license for painting, like the one that I live in. But regardless, you're going to figure out how much it is and put it in that spreadsheet. All right, so now let's talk about what specific kind of business you're going to create and how to even create it or register it. Now, to cover my butt, this is not legal, financial, or just general advice. If you're looking for that, seek a professional. Now, with that being said, what I often see for painting companies is they will file as an LLC, and then later possibly an accountant or attorney will suggest to them to possibly file as an S Corp when they do their taxes, but that's after you've made some money, and they usually start as an LLC. Now, there's another link down in the description. You're gonna click on that link and it's gonna take you to a website that'll show you every single state and how much it costs to file an LLC in that state. Now, again, this isn't legal advice in any sort, but you could go a different route of being a sole proprietor, and that basically just means that you're the business, and then you can file a trade name or a doing business as name. And usually filing that trade name is a lot cheaper than opening an LLC. But being a sole proprietor, there are some advantages as well as disadvantages. And I think eventually you'll probably lean more towards the LLC. I'm kind of at a crossroads because, like I was saying in the beginning, I think you should start with as little money as possible, but also minimize risk as possible. And with the LLC, that stands for Limited Liability Company, so it does minimize the risk. And you might live in a state like I do, or some of these others that it's only $50 to become an LLC and register, but I'll let you decide on what you're gonna do there. But those are the most common scenarios that you'll see, is so sole proprietor or an LLC. If you're gonna be doing it with a business partner or anything like that, I would definitely have an agreement of who's responsible for what and an exit strategy in case one of you decides you no longer want to do it. But all right, in that spreadsheet, if you're going to do the LLC, put on the next line down how much it's going to cost to file that, or if you're going to do just a trade name or something, put how much it's going to cost to do that. You can go Google your state, Secretary of State, find the website, and it should list all the information you need there. Now, talking about that and that limited liability company and like limiting your risk, let's talk about something that you're probably thinking, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Now, I'm sure you could conjure up some crazy scenario, but I would ask, is it really worth worrying about that? An analogy would be just in life in general, you could be minding your own business and some poisonous creature could come bite you today and you could die from it. But is it really worth worrying over that. In my opinion, it's not. And really, there's three big things that I think are the risks for starting a painting company. One is the amount of money that you put into it, which we're going to try to minimize. Not because we're planning to fail, because we're minimizing risk. The next thing is the amount of time that you invest trying to get this painting business going. And then the last thing is just like, you might be afraid of this shame that if you fail. And failing is scary, and nobody wants to fail. And a lot of times people don't start something just because of this fear of failing, but just run out the scenario if you fail. A lot of people I know are just afraid, like, what am I gonna tell my family and friends if I end up not being successful at this? But really, it's a pretty easy conversation. They're like, hey, you still doing that painting thing? It's like, no, I tried it, figured out it wasn't for me, and I moved on. I mean, that's what you're afraid of. It's really not that hard of a conversation. There's no point in being ashamed. A lot of great entrepreneurs failed, so don't let that be the reason to stop you from doing something that you want to do. Other than that, start out small. Residential painting, little jobs for homeowners. There's not a lot of stuff that can go wrong there. But like I said, you could conjure up some crazy thing to worry about, but in my opinion, it's not worth worrying about that. It's like worrying that you're gonna die today from some poisonous creature. All right, now I'm gonna hit on something that you don't have to do, but I know it might be running around your head. A step that you could do at this point would be to open a bank account. And you're going to choose the bank of your choice. I would definitely go with a banking institution that's not going to charge you for the account. And I would recommend doing it and then running all your transactions through that account. Just keep everything nice, neat, and organized. But you're going to call your bank and you're going to ask, what do I need to open up this business? Ask them if you can open it with your social security number and your business name or your trade name. They may want an EIN number. It just kind of depends on the bank and your scenario. Basically what that is, it's called an employment identification number. It's basically registering your business with the federal government, not just the state. I'll put a link to the website down below. It's free to do. It takes about 15 minutes and you immediately get a number. They're going to ask one of the questions, why are you filing for this? And one of the answers is to open a bank account. That's the one I would select. You will eventually want to do this later on down the road. You can get it done now, but I just wanted to cover that in case that came up in conversation or you were worried about it or just wondering. And I've seen it go both ways. Personally, at Wells Fargo, they wanted me to have an EIN number for one of my businesses, and then at a different bank, they're fine with just using my social security number and opening it without an EIN number. All right, so let's talk about insurance. Do you need insurance? Now, again, this isn't advice, but I would recommend get insurance. But we're gonna do this in a very smart way. What you're gonna do is get 3 quotes. So call an insurance broker, 3 of them, and get quotes. But really what's gonna be helpful talking to them is just ask, hey, what are my local laws and regulations? It's different from place to place in terms of what kind of insurance you may or may not need. But the 2 main kinds of insurance that you'll be dealing with is liability insurance and workers' compensation. Now usually, at least where I live, you only have to get workers' compensation if you're gonna be running payroll or have employees, which we are not gonna do at this time. You need to prove you have a system, can make money before you hire any employees. At least that's the way I would do it. But you do want general liability insurance. So the broker is gonna ask, how much do you plan to do in business? And they're gonna ask some questions like revenue. They might ask like, what do you plan to sub out or pay in payroll? And you're gonna tell them as little as you can. Tell them, I think I'll do like 10,000, or just, you can ask them, what's the minimum I can put on the application? Because we're trying to minimize startup costs as well as risk. And there probably is like a minimum amount they're gonna allow you to apply with. And $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. If you say I'm planning on doing this much, but you end up doing this much at the end of the year, you're gonna have to pay more into liability insurance to make up that, but you don't have to pay it up front. You can pay it after you made the money. So then on the next line in that spreadsheet, you're gonna put the minimum amount you can pay to get insurance. It might be different for different brokers. They might let you finance it in different ways. Put the minimum amount of your very first payment after getting 3 quotes, but do not sign up for the liability insurance yet. Just tell that broker, hey, I would like this ready to go when I get my first job. Before I do actually any work, I'm gonna get this initiated, but don't do it now because it's another startup cost and risk we can eliminate. I'll explain more about that later and when you're gonna do it. And now that might not be possible for everyone, because when you do that step 1, you might have to get a license in order to operate. And in order to apply for that license, maybe they say something like you have to show your proof of insurance or something like that. So you're gonna have to plan accordingly, but just stick to that. How can I keep the startup costs low and minimize as much risk as possible? Because if this doesn't work out, again, it's your time and your money that you've invested that you're risking. Okay, now let's talk about taxes. You're probably wondering and worrying like, what kind of taxes do I need to pay? And do I need to set something up or whatever it is? And really, I'm gonna break down 3 different categories of taxes. First, I wanna talk about the only tax that you would have to pay before you made any money, and that would be a payroll tax. There's a lot of different payroll taxes, and there's plenty of software companies like QuickBooks that'll keep it all organized for you, even pay it for you and that sort of thing. But again, we're not hiring employees right now, so you don't have to worry about that. You're gonna be doing everything yourself, and if you need help in the beginning, I really strongly think it's best to pay via subcontracting versus payroll. So we don't have to worry about that one. Now, another tax is your traditional tax, like an income tax, like that you would pay at the end of the year, or if you've been working as an employee, you might even get money back at the end of the year because you've been paying in, and they say you overpaid and they give it back. But if you're running your own business and you make income, you actually make money, you're gonna have to pay some taxes. But again, we don't have to worry about that because you don't pay that until you make money, and I wouldn't even worry about it until you make money, and there's no upfront cost. Now, another kind of tax that's commonly called a sales tax, and depending on where you live, I know different parts of the world and stuff, they might call it something else, and there might even be multiple ones associated with it, but it would be a tax that when you sell something, you have to charge them and then pay that. So like if you go to the grocery store and you buy some milk, you'll notice on your receipt, there's gonna be some taxes on there. Now, I got a link in the description. Go there and click on that link, and it's gonna show you if you have a sales tax in your state. A lot of states, like the one I live in, for services, you don't have to charge a sales tax. So there's goods and there's services. We're offering painting as a service, not as a good. We're not selling a product. We're selling a service. So if you live in a state where you don't have to charge a sales tax, just put 0 on that spreadsheet. But if you live in a state where you do have to charge a sales tax, figure out what that percentage is. And then when you go to sell a paint job, you're gonna add that on. So if you're charging, say, $5,000 for the paint job and the tax rate is 10%, you're gonna charge an additional $500 for tax. Just like you'd see on a receipt for a gallon of milk, you've got the gallon of milk price, and then you got your taxes underneath. But again, you don't have to pay any of that until you actually make money and get income. Now, the last thing I'll say, especially if it's like hard to figure out, what are the rates, and you're still like worried and concerned because it wasn't very clear because it's just different in different places. Kind of like painting, you can go interview accountants. A lot of times they'll do like a free consultation, like a free estimate. You can go tell them what you're doing, ask all these questions, figure out what the rates are and everything, and you are planning to hire them. I would say don't hire them until you've made money. In a lot of cases, when you're first starting out, you'll only need them once a year when you file your taxes, but as you grow, you might want to consult with them more regularly. Maybe if you're making a lot of money, to make it easier to manage, you'd like to reserve your taxes once a quarter so it isn't this big bill at the end of the year. The point is, you can go talk to an accountant for free, and you can get all these questions answered and alleviate any concerns or any roadblock that's keeping you from starting the painting business. All right, now let's get to the fun stuff. How are you gonna sell a paint job? You're gonna need to market. There's a lot of different ways that you can market, but in the beginning, in my opinion, the way that you wanna market, the tactics you wanna use is ones that generate actual leads, meaning a name, a phone number, an address of somebody who is interested in getting your painting services. So putting up a billboard somewhere, that might not generate you leads. But there are pay for lead services. It used to be called Home Advisor. They switched it to Angie's Leads. There's Networks, there's Painter Choice, there's Craft Jack, and there's more than that. But basically what they do is they say, hey, if I give you a lead, you pay me this much for it. And they can be pretty expensive. The one that's gonna generate the most leads is gonna be the Angie's Leads. That was formerly Home Advisor. And when you're starting out, this is a high number, but when you're starting out and you're new and you're learning and you're probably not gonna be charging as much, I would expect that to come into 20 to 30% of the job. So if you sell a $1,000 job, $200 to $300 of that is gonna be paying for those leads, which is a really, really high cost. And there's no guarantee that you're actually gonna turn that into money. And when you're first starting out, you might fumble, trip up, make mistakes. That would be sales, doing the estimate and asking for the job. And people don't always start off doing that really well. So there's that risk there. But I would say I would plan for 20 to 30%. And that's where the majority of your startup cost is gonna come. But you're in luck. If you really are totally against this and don't want to go do it, the cheapest, easiest way is to go knock on doors. Now, I know this is scary and people are gonna be way against it. I just know from experience. Knock on 3 doors. After that, it all just goes away. It's kind of like you procrastinate something, but once you do the first step, you kind of just get into it and it's not that bad. You realize you're making some fear up in your head of how it is, and you will be shocked how willing people are to help somebody who's starting a business. Some young entrepreneurial spirit comes by, it's like, hey, I'm so-and-so, just started my painting business. I'm just going around the neighborhood seeing if anybody would like a free estimate for painting. People are generally happy. I'd say 80% of them are happy. I mean, these are homeowners. They're doing pretty good. They will want to help you out. And you're gonna get more leads than anybody you're ever gonna hire because it's you. They're actually helping you. If you go do that, you should get at least 1 lead an hour, if not more. And this is 100% free, no money. Like I said, you do that, someone's gonna be like, you know what, sure, give me an estimate. I wanted to get my bedroom painted. How much to paint my bedroom? Generally what I do in that situation is I grab their name and number and I'll say, hey, I'll give you a call later to do that estimate because I still have some more marketing to do. Or if you're prepared and ready, you can just give them an estimate right then and there. But I know this because this is how I started my painting company. I have sold millions of dollars worth of paint jobs from going door to door. I've done it personally myself. I've hired people to do it. It is at the top of the list for ROIs in terms of your return on investment, and it works. All right, so after you get those leads, you're gonna set up estimates. So you're gonna have to measure out whatever they want painted and come up with a price. I give my standards, my painting standards, away for free. Just shoot me an email letting me know that you want them and I'll email you back with the standards. You can use those to figure out how many hours the job's gonna take, and you can do the math on how much you wanna make an hour, plus what the cost of paint is and that sort of thing. Now you're also gonna need a contract, which you can just Google like painting contract. There's probably a free one out there that you can just download and use that in the meantime. If you're super worried about that and you want to invest, which I would say wait until you're actually making money, I do sell spreadsheets that come with a contract, terms and conditions. All you do is enter the measurements and the paint and it spits out a price for you that I've worked on for over the last decade and whatnot. Obviously, I recommend that. It's a product I sell, but like I'm saying, let's minimize risk and how much you're going to put into this. Do a job first and then use that money to invest in getting more things that aren't completely necessary at this point. You do the estimate. Most important thing is what's called closing, which is just simply make sure you ask them if you can do the job. For me, it just reminds me of like sports. Usually you watch a game and you want one of the teams to win for whatever reason. The person that you're giving an estimate to, they just need a reason to want you to win. So give them one. Sometimes it's just as easy as just asking for the job. Say, here's the price. What do you say? Can I do it? Sure, go ahead. Something like that. All right, so now what are we gonna do? Are you gonna do the painting or are you gonna hire to do the painting? So hiring is probably something that you've been thinking about and worrying about. Now in the beginning, I know this is gonna be a little controversial, but I really believe that you should not be hiring anybody at this point. You need to prove that you can replicate this system, that you can make money, that you have systems before you hire anybody. If you need help and you don't want to do the painting, I would recommend subcontracting out the painting and doing a really, really good job managing that job and that job site, being there and helping out and making sure that the quality is high. At least in my experience, there are more subs than people looking for a painting job. And usually the subs, they already have all their equipment, right? Painters, sprayers, power washers, ladders, and they've got a lot of experience painting. Versus if you're gonna hire an employee, you'll have to provide all that stuff. And then what if you don't have a job for them next? Now you have to lay them off, which will raise things like payroll taxes, and it just messes things up. I have subs and employees. I'm just saying, if you want my advice, don't hire anybody yet. If you need any help, subcontract it out. And you can do either or. Personally, this is exactly how I started my painting business, and I actually painted. I painted for 3 months. I saved up 10 grand, and then I started delegating the labor. All right, so when you get the job, the important thing is you gotta ask for a down payment. Now this is common with painting. If anything, the client should be expecting it, so don't let that be like a concern or anything. I would ask for at least 25% and go all the way up to 50%. And that money is what you're gonna use. So they say, yes, I will allow you to do this paint job. Let's say it's $3,000, they give you a third. That's $1,000 that you just made, and that should make you profitable as soon as you book that first job. You're gonna take that money and you're gonna get the things that you need, like general liability insurance. So get it all set up, you're ready to buy it, but don't buy it until you actually get a down payment. As soon as you get that, use that to buy materials, maybe some tools, and other things like liability insurance and whatnot. You're gonna produce the job, either yourself or you're gonna sub that out, and then you're gonna collect the rest of the money and you'll have more profit to buy other things that you probably want. Like you're probably thinking, I want business cards and a website. Those are good things, but they're not necessary to get started. And I see a lot of people get hung up on like, well, I'll start my painting business after I get all these things, and they get all those things and then they never actually get the painting business started. Prove to yourself that you can do this, that you can make money. And then you just rinse and repeat. Just do this over and over. Like I said, that's what I did. I went door to door. I got the job. I painted the job. I just kept doing that. And then all of a sudden I saved up 10 grand and realized it's no longer worth it for me painting. To get to the next level, I've got to start delegating things. If you're worried, like I'm not going to be able to find a subcontractor or something like that, just put up an ad right now. It's going to cost you some money, but put up some ads saying, hey, I've got some paint jobs. I'm looking for a subcontractor to get it done. And you'll see people will respond, and there are subs out there that are willing to paint. And the key to having subs do good is good production management, which you're gonna do. All right, now another thing I know that might be going on in your head is there enough demand for me to start this painting business? Or are there so many painting companies in my area and they're so good that I'm just never gonna be able to be successful at this? Trust me, there is plenty to go around. In my specific area, some of the best painters I've ever seen are here, and there's plenty enough for all of us. Like I was saying with that sports analogy, people usually root for the underdog. And right now, that's you. If you just started your painting company and there's some other guy who's had it for 10 years and he's killing it and doing great, the natural behavior of people is like, hey, I want to give it to the small guy. The guy who came by my door who's starting his painting business, I want to root for them. I'd rather give the paint job to them because I know that's going to mean the world to them versus this guy where it's just another paint job. So don't let that be a story in your head and stop you from doing what you want to do. Trust me, there is plenty of paint jobs to go around in whatever area you're in. And if you are willing to put in the effort, you can do it. You'll notice when you start doing estimates, a lot of clients will be like, yeah, I tried to get estimates, but I called these painting companies and never called me back. This guy didn't show up. Sometimes it's just answering the phone and showing up. But you get the point. Don't let one of those doubts and fears in your head stop you from doing it, because most likely it's just a story in your head. All right, now the last thing I want to talk about is, okay, well, how much money am I going to make? What's a realistic expectation of how much money I'm going to make in the first year? Now, again, I know this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to say $30,000 to $70,000. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that argue you can make way more than $70,000. And I'm not arguing that. I completely agree with them. But in my personal opinion, at least right now at this time, that's what I'd say the average person is going to make. So can you make more? Yes. If you make more than 70 grand, I'd say you're doing above average. And if you make less than 30 grand, I'd say you're doing below average. But I feel like those are realistic, good expectations and goals for you to work at. And the first year is always the hardest year. Once you get by that first year, it should only be going up from there. But don't let that discourage you. You can definitely make more than that. But like I said, you'd be above average if you did. And if you can't make at least 30 grand, you're doing below average and you need to make a change, because you should definitely be able to make more than that. All right, thanks for watching. Check the description for all the links and related videos I'll put down there. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.